Hey, this is Bond Diesel, and today I'm bringing you a Division 2 video, kind of my little post-mortem, hopefully a fairly short video, but if you have listened to the other ones, you know how that tends to go. But just kind of talking about the Division 2, Episode 2 specifically, kind of in retrospect. It's been, a month or more now since the Episode 2 came out. And I'm just going to kind of break it down into the different types of content we got, specifically like episode 2 content, which I consider the missions, classified assignments, the new specialization, some new, just new things, as well as the title update 6 changes, which I kind of look at in two different ways. So the first part of the update, I guess the biggest part content wise was the Pentagon area. So it opened up a safe house and two new missions, the Pentagon mission and the DARPA Labs mission. What we find in these missions, spoiler alert, is that there is this bioreactor that apparently can replicate material if it's used, and the whole idea for that was built around was being able to replicate a cure for the dollar flu that was ravaging New York City at the time of development. In both of these missions, there's a bunch of recordings from some Pentagon or DARPA employees talking about the development of this machine that wraps up with them saying that it's done, and now they just need to wait for a cure from Ann Arbor, which is where a cure is being developed. If you want to know more about that, I suggest reading the Broken Dawn book. So the two missions themselves, I actually think these are a couple of the best missions in the game. If not, they're a bit long, you could say, but I think they're really solid. I especially like the DARPA mission, but the Pentagon one is great as well. The elephant in the room with this update was that, with episode 1, there was the new Kinley College area. There were two new missions, the White Oak and the zoo. And then there were some other changes. And even though Kinley College, which I did a video on, which is I think one of my most popular videos ever, which isn't much for me, but Kinley College was underwhelming to say the least. And then episode 2 kind of made that worse by releasing a content update that was essentially just two new missions with no new mode or anything. So we went from episode 1, where Kinley College's expedition was a new mode, two new missions, so on and so forth, to episode 2 was just two new missions and then some other stuff, which we'll talk about. So what's a bummer is I feel like that kind of put a stain on these two missions, because the level design, the actual missions themselves, I find to be very fun. The level design is great. They're good missions. They're good additions to the game. The problem is that they just aren't enough, or they weren't enough, however you look at it. On top of that, we did get classified assignments, which you have to have the year 1 pass for. This time we got the Mexican embassy and the Marina supply route. They're good. I think that they're fun to play, but they're still plagued by the problem with all of the classified assignments that you play through them once, you collect the collectibles and the backpack charm, and then there's never any reason to ever come back to them. I think that they would be fun content to play through again. The problem is that I don't think that the targeted loot works on them, which we'll talk about in a moment. And there's no difficulty levels, so I think it's story difficulty no matter what you do. Which is just, it's fun the first time you play through just to get the story, but then, if you want to go back and explore these kind of cool areas again, there's kind of no reason to. Now, I'll still argue, I still believe that the NSA bunker classified assignment from episode 1 is basically, I think, the best content that's been released with this game, almost. Definitely of these classified assignments, and is definitely worth playing through, because there's 6 classified assignments now, and as far as I can tell, the NSA bunker gives some backstory to Division 1 and kind of gives you some insight into some of the people from Division 1 that we didn't have before. And I found that to be really, really, really cool. And, so these classified assignments were fine, but they were just kind of I think the plague of a lot of Division content, even in Division 1, is that there's these cool stories that you get to see or hear about or experience that are just completely disconnected from the rest of the game. Kinley College, all of these classified assignments, at least the Pentagon missions are directly connected to the story and push that forward a bit. The Technician Specialization was another piece of content released. We have a 6-barreled or 6, whatever you want to call it, rocket launcher that has little seeking missiles to it, as well as a bunch of other little bonuses that you get for using this specialization. I've been using this basically since it came out. I think this specialization is incredible. I think it's the second best part of this update, behind the targeted loot changes. And I think the specialization was a great addition. In my opinion, there's no reason to use any of the other ones anymore. Obviously, that's just me, and I'm sure lots of people are still using the other ones to great effect. But I really do think that the way that it forces choices, there's a way to either, I believe, extend duration or damage, and you have to pick one or the other in the skill tree. And I really hope that they may even go back and revamp the other specializations one day, to kind of meet this technician one, because I feel like it feels really good when you have it put on there if you're using it appropriately, where all of the other ones just kind of give you some passive buffs. So Technician Specialization, great addition to the game. Named gear and guns was a big thing. It's 30 something items. Both guns and gear have been added. I would say this is probably tied with my second favorite thing about this update. These items, there's still some RNG to them. They have a perfect talent, whether they're gear or guns, but their damage, the damage amount or the specific little attributes that the gear has is all still random. So you can pick up a named gear piece that has terrible rolls and isn't really worth using. So it encourages you to keep going after the perfect version of it, or the nearly perfect one that you can recalibrate. This has really changed the game pretty big for me. It's the named items are what I'm still chasing. So that's the content I have in this game at this point, is to go after those, in a game that I would argue is kind of content starved at the moment and will be for at least a couple more months. Great change, has really changed up the loadout, game, in my opinion. There's all types of builds and stuff you can make now, and I think it's really, really good, and I'm glad they did this, and I hope they continue to add more. There were some DZ changes. I've spent a decent amount of time in the DZ since Title Update 6. The big change is that they're trying to push more people into servers together. I kind of notice it kind of depends. It's, the old complaint about how only 16 players in the DZ, especially DZ East, just doesn't feel like enough, and or 12, yeah, 12. And 16 would feel better, 20 would even better, but I think that's not going to happen, and I think it's fine for people to want that, but the DZ is one of those things that if you've heard me talk about it, if you've been angered by hearing me talk about it, it's just, it kind of is what it is, in my opinion. It's, hopefully they keep trying to improve it, but I think that a lot of the people who enjoyed the DZ in Division 1 are looking for a thing that the devs don't want the game to be anymore. So I'll keep an eye on it. It doesn't really appeal to me a ton. It's a good zone to do some farming in, with the risk of someone coming after you. But I don't really find it to be very compelling content. I didn't really find it to be in Division 1 either, so maybe my opinion doesn't matter here. Some quality of life changes. They did change up the gear sets, and now they only require 4 items to unlock all of the pieces or all of the talents. They're cool. I haven't really messed with them too much. It seems like aces and eights and hardwired and stuff have their spot, but I still don't really think that they seem like the meta. The inventory changes, where now you can sort, or you have a bunch more options now. My favorite one is seeing the base damage of guns. So now if you look for the handy dandy gear or the gun damage chart. You can see if your guns have like max damage or not, and it helped me get rid of a bunch of inventory. So definitely check that out, and get in there and check out those options. The stash space got doubled, they added 100 spots, I believe. That's nice, cool. And then crafting and recalibration has changed a bunch, and I would advise you just to go look up those changes on the state of the game or something like that. But I like it. I think it's a good step forward. With Title Update 6 changes, kind of separate from Episode 2, the targeted loot I think was a big deal, and it's probably my favorite update to this. I feel like basically no matter what I'm doing, if I'm doing it in a spot that's dropping, that's targeting loot that I want, it's great. It's a great way to farm named items. It's a great way to just kind of respect your time with the game. If you're going after a certain type of build, it gives you the ability to not just get what you want immediately, but to at least focus on something specific. So I think the targeted loot is huge. I don't really have a ton to say about it other than I think it's really great. And then the weapon balancing was a good thing. I still think that there's some meta weapons, but for the most part, if you want to use a gun and you properly build towards it, you can use basically whatever you want now, save for a few items. I really hope that my MK16 gets some love eventually. I was hoping it would get an RPM boost to make it a little more effective, but we're still waiting. So with Title Update 6, I mean, I think overall Title Update 6 kind of set the game up for the future. I really think that Title Update 6 is what is the patch that is, and I'm not talking about episode 1 or 2. I'm talking about Title Update 6. Makes the game feel done, makes it feel complete. Obviously there's still bugs, there's still issues they need to work on. That's fine, but Title Update 6 is the first time I've played this and been like, oh, okay, this feels right. Like, this feels the way it probably should have at release, and I think really sets the stage for the game to move forward. And that moving forward, I think, is going to include a few things. Episode 3 is coming. They haven't given us any real hard info on it yet. Hopefully we get that sooner than later. We know we're going back to New York City. We know we're getting one more specialization. We know the raid is coming. That was supposed to come with episode 2. And I assume some other changes. Story-wise, they hint in the Pentagon missions that we need someone to run the bioreactor. So I have a pretty strong feeling it's the guy who Keener has with him, Chernenko. So I assume that's going to play in. We know that the whole point of NYC is to go hunt Keener. So I assume the whole goal is to take him out and then bring Chernenko back. I was kind of hoping we'd have Jessica Candle come back to DC with us and help the bioreactor, but I suspect it's going to be Chernenko. But episode 3 needs to be big because of the next topic, and it's year 2. So year 2, I'm assuming, is going to be 3 more episodes of content. Maybe some actual map expansion like they said was going to happen before the game came out. Maybe some meaningful story progression, and maybe some significant change ups that I am too dumb to even consider. My big thing is I think year 2 is going to be a paid DLC, and I think that can be okay if under 3 conditions: that episode 3 is really, really good and very different from episode 1 and 2. That year 2 is announced and gives specific details about the content that's coming. That's going to be really exciting. I think a lot of people are expecting that year 2 is going to maybe have things like a survival sequel, maybe like an underground sequel of some type, maybe even Last Stand or Resistance, things like that. I've said for a while, I don't think people should expect direct sequels to those content, but maybe some content that uses those ideas and then expands on them. But episode 3 needs to be really, really good to get people back into the game and to make them willing to pay any amount of money for year 2, which is the third thing that year 2 has to do, is it has to be reasonably priced. It can't be $60. It can't be $50. It probably can't be $40. It probably needs to be like $30 for the year 2 pass. I'm not in marketing or in the game dev world and all that. I have a feeling $30 probably isn't enough to fully fund a year or two of a game. So I'll be curious to see how they handle that. But they're gonna need to bring people back into the fold. Since episode 2, we've had a bunch of community changes in the way that they communicate with us. It's kind of interesting because what everyone was wanting was more transparency and more communication. And in response, we now don't have state of the game every week, and we get a forum post that does give some good info. But on the other hand, we do have more streams from the com devs, and there is some stuff going on there. But it still feels like the game is in kind of like a limbo state right now. I will say that there is a severe sale in the game right now. I believe Division 2 is actually cheaper than Division 1 at this point. I think a lot of people are doing the Chicken Little dance with that, saying that it means the game is done. What I think people need to realize is that with episode 3 coming and with year 2 coming, they want this game in people's hands so that they may buy a year 2, is my guess. So my kind of final thoughts on it. I'm kind of the eternal optimist with Division. I always have been. I'm loved for it by some, hated by others for it, and that's fine. I get it. But I understand the hesitance from others. I don't think episode 3 is going to be 2 missions and a new specialization. But I totally understand why there's people who do. And if that's what it is, if New York City releases, we jump on the helicopter to go there, and it's a couple spots of the New York City map that has a couple new missions, and that's all it is, then even I'm probably gonna lose some faith in this game. So I'm even putting a lot on on episode 3. I'm sure I'll play year 2 either way, but I can definitely tell you that episode 3 is probably going to determine whether or not I'm like really involved in doing videos and podcasts and stuff, or if I'm just kind of checking in on the game when I can and getting away from the occasionally rough community. And that's it for this video. So if you want to support my content, including my YouTube videos, check out my Patreon at patreon.com/TheEchoCast. The EchoCast is my Division 2 podcast. It is available on all platforms, including iTunes, Anchor, and Spotify. Search for The EchoCast. I am Bond Diesel on Twitch, where I try to stream 3 or so times a week. And I am at Bond Diesel on Twitter, where you can catch my random thoughts, state of the game live tweets, and the occasional foot in my own mouth. That's all I have. So until next time.